Now that Donald Trump is going to be president again, we're hearing people saying Nomad Capitalist will die a grim death. No one's going to need a second passport anymore. Donald Trump's going to lower your taxes to zero. Today, I'm going to tell you why they're all wrong. I will tell you this. Every time something happens in the world, there are people here to predict the death of Nomad Capitalist and the diversification industry. I remember March 2020, I was in Myanmar. Every time I go to Myanmar, something bad happens. And I ultimately cut my trip short to come back to Malaysia before they closed the border as the whole world came grinding to a halt. But on one of my final days in Myanmar, I remember seeing somebody saying that this upcoming pandemic, we didn't really know what it was going to be yet, but someone said this is going to be the end of Nomad Capitalist. Who's going to travel anymore? And we went on to make millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars in profit over the next 1, 2, 3 years because of all the heavy-handedness that took place. And here's the message I want you to take away from that. I don't need pandemics. I don't need Kamala Harris. This business realizes that there's always an opportunity somewhere in the world. That is our ethos, and that's what I want you to take away. For some of you, that opportunity may indeed be in the United States. I'm going to tell you why I think you shouldn't be so fast to think that in a moment. But there's always opportunities somewhere in the world. We're seeing the UK, for example, is falling apart. And so that brings me to my first reason why Nomad Capitalist will always be here is, yes, you have some Americans who are feeling better about what's happening in their country. I'm going to cover that as well. But the UK has introduced a new budget not so long ago. It is tax, 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 tax. I've been telling you, I have never seen so much negative coverage, never seen so much stuff that goes against everything that we talk about, everything that you as an entrepreneur should be worried about in the UK. It is a daily barrage in my inbox of all the problems there. We've talked about France and how they want to tax you no matter where you live. Does that spread across other countries in Europe as talk of wealth taxes come back in Europe? Australia, still not out of the woods. We've seen pandemic was an eye-opener to show a lot of people, your country's not going to be there for you. And I think a lot of people watched us during the pandemic. And even before that, they watched before that. They said, okay, this guy's kind of interesting, but things aren't so bad here. We've got a great passport. Look what happened. They got locked in their homes. They couldn't leave their own country. The police were knocking on their door for posting the wrong things on Twitter. People got a wake-up call. Now, some of those people got lulled back to sleep. Hey, it's all over now. They'll never do that again. But the reality is there's always something happening in the world. The vast majority of our clients are not Americans. Why? Because I take my own advice. Yeah, I am from the United States. I understand the United States. It is one of the largest populations of English speakers in the world. And so we have a lot of Americans watching. But our clientele has become diversified because we do a lot of stuff these days offline that you don't see. And we get people from all over the world. And by the way, whether you're an American or not, there's a network effect for you, for us having that the client from Brazil feeds us certain information that only having clients from Brazil can have. And the client from Vietnam, and the client from Poland, all that information gets fed in and makes us a stronger company versus just, hey, we only help Americans. We're really good at helping Americans because it's something that I've walked the walk, and we love the Americans. What we've never done well with is my candidate lost, I'm going to panic, I'm going to call someone. It's a lot harder for those folks to follow through. I like watching you be successful. I don't like watching you call me, whether it's Biden wins, we got a lot of calls, or Trump wins, we got a lot of calls. I followed through. 5 passports and counting, bank accounts around the world, companies all around the world, homes all around the world. I want you to have that life. Now, number 2, half the country's still unhappy. And we are going to get people not who knee-jerk react to Trump being in. There has been a stream. I mean, when Roe v. Wade was overturned to the Supreme Court, our industry and our firm got calls from people. I don't want to live in a country where I don't agree with the values. I don't judge people based on their politics because I'm politically homeless. That's part of why I didn't want to live in the United States. I feel like you got to pick one of 2 camps if you live there. And if you are not in lockstep with one of those 2 camps, you are thrown out. Ask Mitt Romney, ask so many other politicians in the United States. What happened when we generally agree on policy, but we don't agree on everything else? Now, I'm not saying I'm in the same position as a Mitt Romney. I have different views because I've lived all over the world. And you know what happens? You learn some things and you realize, hey, the way Americans look at this, maybe there's a better way to look at this particular issue. And I think one of the reasons the U.S. is going in the wrong direction is it's becoming like so many countries, so many not very wealthy countries, where it's like, this is how we do it. And everyone just digs their heels in. And that kind of innovative spirit of, hey, what would work the best is going away as people dig their heels into one of two camps. And so what we see is there's still a lot of folks who either their candidate lost or the values that they stand for aren't coming and they still want to leave. My brand is you don't put all your eggs in one basket. I don't care who is in power because you never know what will change. There are a lot of forward-looking people in the United States who voted for Trump, who are happy Trump got elected, who realize Trump is not going to solve all the problems. Some of the stuff Trump is talking about, he could have done in the first term. Why didn't he? Oh, well, he was too in with the establishment. Okay, well, I don't think that this whole cabinet is entirely un-establishment now. And so what I think people realize is, number one, even if you agree with everything Trump does, much of it could be undone in the future. Better years too early than a day too late. There are people who believe that because they've seen politicians in action. And hey, maybe they like Trump, maybe they don't like him that much, but he's better than the alternative. But whatever they believe, hey, you know what? I'm not putting my faith in politicians. I'm not putting my faith in the government. And so the idea that because my guy got in for 4 years, maybe he's got 2 years to really get stuff done before the midterms come, and then there's potentially, a more democratic picture in Congress. I want to have options. And if the price of having options, if the price of having an offshore bank account is filling out one form every year and filing it with the Treasury, hey, you know what? I'm better off having some of my money in Singapore or even in Georgia if I don't want to commit that much, or somewhere, right? We have people who want to put their money in Mexico, but I want to have my money in different places around the world. I want to have a different passport. I'll tell you this, the right wing are involved in their own way in not wanting people to leave. It was a Trump policy for me that was the final straw in expat life is too hard in the United States. I'm not a super patriotic guy towards this country. And the juice isn't worth the squeeze anymore. That was a Trump policy. That was America First policy. I actually believe in freedom in all ways, including in ways that don't benefit me. We've talked about that in Live Like a King Belgrade. Hey, I think it's kind of cool. People can smoke inside. I don't smoke. I don't like the smell of smoke. I don't like coming home and, I don't like that. But you know what? It's freedom to let people smoke wherever the hell they want. I believe in actual freedom. And I realize that no U.S. politician, probably no politician anywhere, really believes in actual freedom. They just agree with the freedoms that their, base wants them to believe in. And so what happens when those freedoms turn on you? What happens when something changes? You want to be diversified. And if you want to stay in the U.S., then you should. But I think, as people learned during the pandemic, the U.S. is not as much on your side as you think it is, and that doesn't matter who's in power. And so forward-looking Americans and forward-looking people everywhere, as much as they may breathe a sigh of relief when their candidate gets in, I think that eyes have been opened over the last couple of years especially. Stuff that I was talking about with my dad when I was 12 and 13 years old has come to roost. The Western legacy brand countries, the wheels falling off. And I don't want to be there when the engine stops. I want options. The other reason is, there's going to be countries, let's just say this whole America First thing plays out very well. There will be countries potentially stand to lose. Is China going to lose? Is Mexico going to lose? Which countries are going to lose? Those people are going to need a plan. And yet, what I would be concerned about if I'm an American, and what I think what some of the forward-looking Americans that we talk to are thinking about, if the U.S. pisses other countries off, what does that do to my ability to travel, my ability to get residence permits? What does that do for my ability to sell things into other countries? You're welcome to disagree with this. I've never been someone who just said, like, everything USA or insert your country here. We will live in the U.S. We'll only travel in the U.S. We'll only have a U.S. passport, only have U.S. bank accounts, only have U.S. friends, wives, husbands, kids, clients, customers. Everything's in the U.S. Well, the reason Nomad Capitalist isn't going to die just because one guy got elected in the U.S. is because I've done precisely the opposite. And so when I look back to the last big recession in the U.S., the Great Recession, there were always, yes, that was a pretty global recession, and yet there were some silver linings in places around the world that you could have taken advantage of. If you were just in one country, you probably got squeezed worse than you would have somewhere else. Maybe you would have gotten squeezed to some extent everywhere else, but there were countries that came out of that stronger. and they outperformed, and they did well. And I think you want to be diversified. And I believe that if you're in the US, a country that everybody knows, it's a name brand, it is a target. And if that is your entire identity, your citizenship, your company, all that, some of those countries that you think are going to get squeezed, they may be less open in some ways. And that's all what BRICS is about. We've talked to people like Cyrus Jansen and Doug Casey with interviews on them about what's going to happen. You are seeing the lines of allies form more closely around the world. And I think that the more the U.S. Pulls into itself, the fewer opportunities that presents for Americans who want to be international. And I think you want to be international. Now, I realize there's a lot of people who voted for Trump who don't agree with me. The whole country's going to be solved. And what you heard in the opening is, oh, your taxes are going to zero. Well, no, they're not. Even if Trump gets his greatest dream, maybe corporate tax rates go down to 15%, I don't think I heard much about personal income tax rates going down very much. So I spent years traveling the world paying zero. You ain't getting down to zero. I haven't heard much about capital gains rates, other than they probably won't go up. But if you're invested in Bitcoin, if you're invested in meme stocks, if you're invested in NVIDIA, and you have a lot of capital gains, you're still going to pay a half the amount of tax. Yeah, Kamala, Biden, they were going to raise them. That's what people in other countries, the UK, other Western countries, they're seeing their taxes going up. But no Western country has low taxes. And so I think that what we don't want to do is bathe in feeling good, bathe in, hey, my guy won, we're victorious, and then allow all the problems that remain to somehow get sloughed off because we just feel good. Yeah, feeling good is important. I personally feel better living outside of the U.S. than living inside of the U.S. That's why I do it. That's why I don't come back to the U.S. And you're welcome to disagree with me. This is a channel for people who agree with me, but you're welcome to watch and disagree. And yet, let's not imagine there are no problems. There are some percentage of folks, even though they're happy that Trump got in, who realized you've got a $36 trillion debt. I don't think Trump's paying that down. No matter how much you like Trump, what's the plan to pay it down? So you're still going to have that problem. You're still going to have people at each other's throats. The culture's not going to change. Your guy's in charge. Doesn't mean the 50% who didn't vote for your guy are going to stop talking about the stuff that you don't like. Now they're just going to be salty until they get back in power. And eventually they will get back in power, and then you'll feel badly again. That's just not a system I think you should go through. And so there's some percentage of folks who realize you're not going to solve the systemic issues. Probably can't, no matter who's in charge. Even if you could, is any politician, including the best one, going to actually do it? No, they're politicians. Even if it were better, could it be even better somewhere else? And you know what? There are folks who are just saying, my goodness, I'm tired of this left versus right debacle. Can I get out of this? We filmed Live Like a King in Oman. You're going to see that coming up relatively soon. Not a country you've heard about? My goodness. I have never felt more comfortable. No one's talking about politics. Everybody is kind. My goodness, if everyone in the United States, whether your guy won or not, spent some time in Oman, I think it would be just so refreshing. So I hope you'll watch Live Like a King Oman. There's always going to be a world of opportunity somewhere. And there's always going to be problems in places and people who realize that even though things feel good now, it won't be that way forever. That is our ethos. That's why we will continue to help people who are 7, 8, and 9-figure entrepreneurs have a plan to go where you're treated best. You can go to nomadcapitalist.com/apply if you want to learn more. If you're not ready to go that far, you can go to nomadcapitalist.com/live and join us at our next live event and learn this stuff on a deeper level. Hang out with like-minded people. Start to share your strategies. There's always going to be a business for people who want to go where you're treated best. And I hope you realize, even if you like Trump, the goal shouldn't be to look inward only at the United States. The goal should be to use whatever you feel better about in the United States to build things outward and make sure you're always in a position to win, no matter what happens in your country. We've done that, and that's why we'll win. This is Oman, and today we're showing you luxury living in its beautiful capital city of Muscat. Now we're going to show you one of the sexiest luxury villas here in Oman. We're going to show you how to live like a king